on that yesterday, and I want to elaborate and make sure you understand the Greek social structure. Now, see, I have gone high tech. I have got a dry erase board. This is actually probably more space I have in the classroom. Now, let's talk about the Greek social structure. On the top layer, whoops, I'm sorry about that. I just hit something. On the top layer, we have the polites. All right, this group are your citizens. Okay, they have most of the voting, all the voting rights, and are usually the wealthiest. Okay, now these are the group that all they focus on is basically running the government. Okay, now the right below them are the metics, and the metics are basically your merchants, craftsmen, and so forth. Now, to be a metic, you just have to basically live in Athens. To be a polite or a citizen, you have to be born to two Athenian parents. So just looking for that, you know there is no way a metic could become a polite because you can't change who your birth mother is. Now, all the voting rights are here. These guys did serve in the army. They did serve in the army, but that's all they did. Now, below the metics, you have the freedman class. And the freedman class is basically free slaves or the sons or daughters of free slaves. And they also have no voting. And they're your manual laborers, okay? They're your manual laborers. They also can serve in the military. So this group serves in the military, and the freedman class serves in the military, okay? Now, I'll also throw in women. Now, you won't see normally women on a social structure, but we've been talking about the development of women and women's rights throughout history. Women have very little to no rights in Athenian history. Remember that. They're slightly above in status slaves. Most slaves were considered barbarian. They were captured in war. Now, let's talk about something. We really didn't touch on this too much in class, but I'm going to touch on it now. Let's talk about how political rights is related to social class. And basically, is your class and social class going to determine how much political rights you have? All right? Meaning, if you look at the Athenian social structure, the top class, the polites, are the only ones with any kind of political rights. This means that this section down here is politically disenfranchised. They have no rights. And so does that mean they had no voice in the government? Well, they necessarily couldn't go up and vote, could they? They couldn't take part in the debates, but could they do this? Could a metic try to influence a citizen? Basically, when he came to the metic shop, the metic can go, hey, citizen, what do you think about this policy? You know, I don't like this policy. And he may try to influence the citizen. That may be some way they could be involved in politics, but officially they had none influence in the Greek democracy. Okay? And so when we look at the Greek democracy, we said it sort of looked like remember an upside down triangle. with the base of the political power being the citizens, or they too refer to it as the people, with the Council 500 having the power to appoint 5 leaders, and the leaders are actually on the bottom with very little power. This group proposes the laws to the citizens approve the laws, and these guys are the 5 leaders. They make sure the laws are enforced. And so it's sort of like an upside down triangle, because when you see most governmental structures, it looks sort of like this: king, and then like a ruling class, and then on down. And so that's why it's sort of like that upside down triangle we've been discussing. Now, that being said, in my very high-tech lecture here with the dry erase board, which I hope my dog does not, knock over or anything, will help clear some stuff up for you on that. You got a test coming up still sometime this week. I got to take a look at the calendar, which we're going to talk about. Now, we review that, and social structure we've been talking about. I feel well you understand the concepts of that. Just be aware of the relationship between social structure and political disenfranchisement, political rights, okay? Especially in terms of Greeks and ancient civilization, especially Greeks. That's Greeks of democracy. And when you think of democracy, most people think everybody gets to vote. But in Greece and some other cultures we're going to take a look at, like Rome, citizenship is a lot of times related to social class. And that means that once social class has the power, the sort of below that class is disenfranchised. They have very few political rights. The political disenfranchisement is what I'm talking about. All right. Now, let's talk a little bit about economics in Greece. Got a good thing on the palette you need to probably take a look at with the extent of trade where the Greeks took part of. They traded throughout the Mediterranean. Their primary competition in trading in the Mediterranean was a society called the Phoenicians. The Phoenicians they reacted greatly with throughout their history. They even borrowed their alphabet from the Phoenicians. But the Phoenicians were great sea traders, and they competed heavily with the Greeks. Even though I don't think they had too many conflicts, they were heavy mercantile competition for the Greeks. The Greeks established, as we talked before, colonies throughout the Mediterranean, particularly on the shores of Turkey, as well as the boot of peninsula of the Italian peninsula. And they established extensive trade with these colonies, predominantly in the form of agricultural trade. Agriculture was so, and grain was so valuable that city-states like Athens would actually said you couldn't export grain. And that's how valuable it was. They limited it. It was their lifeline. They used predominantly ships to sail. Their ships had a combination of sails and oars. Greek city-states would often compete with each other for trade business, meaning one city-state said, hey, I'll protect your ships better, and another city-state will say, hey, guys, I'll give you this trade discount. You come here, we'll lower our taxes a little bit. So they were actually one of the first time we've seen where different city-states, different economic entities were going after trade, was looking for trade to come to it. And part of this was because what kind of trading power were they? Were they a land-based trading power? No, geographically they couldn't. They were sea-based trading power. And ships can choose where they stop. They're not stuck to the Silk Road. They can stop anywhere in the ocean. So they can actually compete with other civilizations in the Mediterranean for trade. And they would try to offer incentives to bring trade to their city-states. And another thing we see develop, and this is something you need to take note of because this would have a huge impact in the future, is in Greece, you start to see banks and other organizations starting to finance trade ventures. Huge impact. Okay? I mean, they would have exuberant interest rates of about, let's say, 15-20%, but the trade was that profitable to pay those interest rates off. The ability to finance, enable more people to engage in more risky ventures, which enabled more people to take part in trade. Huge. Two things are huge. A, competition for trade is a big change between different city-states, between different areas. B, bank financing. Huge change. All right. What was traded was not that, much different than what's been traded in the past. How it was traded is the difference. How they got it. How it was traded is how they financed it. The mechanics of trading started to change. Starting to look a wee bit more like we would look at today. Now, yeah, there was still a lot of bartering going on, but as we see before, more city-states are printing their coinage. And so things are starting to change economically. Trade patterns are starting to develop. The sea-based trade starting to bring more things in, getting more complex with bank financing. And, where trade really gets complex is when we hit the Roman Empire next week. Okay, that being said, if you have, some time this weekend, you really need to start reviewing some of those notes. And, start looking over stuff to make sure you're ready for this upcoming test, which I'll probably delay a day or two. It looked like, unfortunately, it's going to be Friday again. Could be Thursday if we go back to school tomorrow. And let me see what else if I have to tell you. Guys, and also, those of you who are viewing this are already doing what you're supposed to do and you're looking at the website. But making sure you keep looking at the website. And let me see if there's anything else I need to mention to you on my notes really quick before I sign off. One thing you may want to keep in mind is we've talked about this before, and it's reference to the type of democracy that Athens has as compared to ours. I love this subject, and you're going to be dealing with this more in your rolling projects. But what you need to keep in mind is that Athens is a what type of democracy? That's correct. It's a direct democracy. So if you remember, a direct democracy, there's nothing standing between the people and the government. We have an indirect democracy or representative democracy in our country. So we elect representatives to make laws for us. So we have somebody between us and our government. You need to make sure you review the citizen responsibility section on the Padlet, which is under the class readings. We talked about this before, but it's something you will need to also know. I understand you know what an Acropolis is. We're going to be talking about that on their test. The different styles of Greek columns I like. Understand the Greek historical periods, guys. Not many, why did it change, the impact of each change. Particularly understand the transition from the, what happened with the change from the classical to the Hellenistic. And understand the consequences of that change. When I say consequences, I'm not just talking about the impact of the Persian War and what how did it change from the classical? What happened that restored the traditional city-state structure, and how did it start? If you remember, we talked about the Persian Wars, and we talked about the Peloponnesian Wars. The Peloponnesian Wars was the result of Athens' victory in the Persian War, because when Athens won, it upset that balance of power. And that's the concept you want to learn, because we're going to see more balance of power as we go through. And the balance of power, whenever two countries have a relationship, their power is balanced, they're both okay. Think back to the Cold War. But what happens if one of those countries get a little bit of advantage over the other countries? And then we'll see wars break out and whatnot. Anyway, that's just something we talked about in class, and I'll try to clarify that, when we get into class. But right now I have my puppy dog at my heel trying to get my attention. And anyway, If you guys got any questions, shoot me a note on the blog, and hope you guys are doing well. And please stay safe, and I will see you whenever we get back to school. Take care now. Bye-bye.